Hello, good morning, students. Please subscribe the channel, drop a like, share, and comment. This is Sri Vishnu Art Press Publications, exercise number 7 and 8 on the speed of 90 words per minute. Start. Having bestowed our anxious consideration, we are disposed to think when we accept the principle of standardization, there is really no rationale not to apply the said principle to the self employed or a person who is on a fixed salary. To follow the doctrine of actual income at the time of death and not to add any amount with regard to future prospects to the income for the purpose of determination of income would be unjust. The determination of income while computing compensation has to include future prospects so that the method will come within the ambit and sweep of just compensation as postulated under section 168 of the Act. In case of a deceased who had held a permanent job with inbuilt grant of annual increment, there is an acceptable certainty but to state that the legal representatives of a deceased who was on a fixed salary would not be entitled to the benefit of future prospects for the purpose of computation of compensation would be inapposite. One may perceive that the comparative measure is certainty on the one hand and uncertainty on the other, but such a perception is fallacious. It is because the price rise does affect a self employed person, and that apart there is always an incessant effort to enhance one's income for sustenance. The purchasing capacity of a salaried person on permanent job when increases because of grant of increments and pay revision or for some other change in service conditions, there is always a competing attitude in the private sector to enhance the salary to get better efficiency from the employees. Similarly, a person who is self employed is bound to garner his resources and raise his charges or fees so that he can live with same facilities. To have the perception that he is likely to remain static and his income to remain stagnant is contrary to the fundamental concept of human attitude, which always intends to live with dynamism and move and change with the time. Though it may seem appropriate that there cannot be certainty in addition of future prospects to the existing income, unlike in the case of a person having a permanent job, yet the said perception does not really deserve acceptance. We are inclined to think that there can be some degree of difference as regards the percentage that is meant for or applied to in respect of the legal representatives who claim on behalf of the deceased who had a permanent job than a person who is self-employed or on a fixed salary, but not to apply the principle of standardization on the foundation of perceived lack of certainty would tantamount to remaining oblivious to the marrows of ground reality, and therefore degree test is imperative. Unless the degree test is applied and left to the parties to adduce evidence, it would be unfair and inequitable. Taking into consideration the cumulative factors, an addition of 40% of the established income of the deceased towards future prospects would be reasonable. It was rightly contended by learned counsel for the state that the trial court had proceeded in the matter rather casually, and there was no proper application of mind or even discussions regarding all the relevant evidence on record. Since the trial court had failed to properly analyze the evidence, the High Court was duty bound to examine the matter in greater detail and to record its conclusions. It is true that when on the evidence brought on record, two views are possible and the court has taken a view which is possible, interference by the appellate court would not be proper. But where the consideration reflects total non-application of mind, interference is not only desirable but proper. We find that extrajudicial confession, which was claimed to be before PWs 5 and 6, was unjustifiably discarded by the trial court. The evidence of PW6 was discarded on the ground that he was not very close to the accused and not a person on whom the accused could repose confidence. It is brought on record that the accused and PW6 were in fact at earlier point of time classmates and schoolmates. They also used to live close to each other. Obviously, it is not impossible that the accused could repose confidence on him. The extrajudicial confession before PW6 was clear, cogent, and appears to have been made in the normal course without any pressure. The conduct of the accused after the incident and discovery of blood-stained articles and the Mangal Sutra have been established by tendering cogent evidence. The presence of blood in the nail clippings of the accused was also a vital circumstance. As noted by this court in Rajiv Rai versus State of Orissa 2003 9 SCC 310, the presence of blood in the nail clipping may not be sufficient by itself to fasten guilt on the accused, but when it is considered with other evidence and found acceptable can provide additional weightage to the prosecution case. The trial court did not seem to consider objectively the evidence in the right perspective and had merely on surmises and conjectures without proper application of mind directed acquittal. The High Court analyzed the evidence in greater detail and exhaustively, having regard to the perfunctory manner of consideration undertaken by the trial court. We find no infirmity in the reasoning indicated by the High Court to discard the view of the trial court. The disclosure made in the post mortem examination as to the nature of injuries found on the body of the deceased would belie the claim of drowning or death by suicide. Any affirmance of the judgment of the trial court in this case would have resulted in grave miscarriage of justice. The judgment of the High Court, though one of reversal, was well merited, supported by sound reasons, and based on overwhelming evidence, and therefore does not warrant interference. Appeal is accordingly dismissed. The bail bounds of the accused are cancelled, and he shall surrender to custody to serve remainder of sentence.